Hello and good morning. I'd like to welcome Mr. Hunt, Congressman Gohmert, Commissioner Pai, members of the media, Commissioner Moon from the City of Marshall, Commissioner Marshall from the City of Marshall, Commissioner Boersma, our District Attorney Koch, Mr. Koch, and representatives from Chris Patty's office, as well as Commissioner Pai and members of the media. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the City of Marshall. My name is Jesus Ericampa. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Marshall. I'd like to also welcome you to the Police Department's headquarters. Well, we are here because of a tragic incident that occurred on December 1st of 2013, where Miss Kari Renee Dunn was brutally murdered at the Beaumont Inn. Her 9-year-old daughter, attempted to make several calls to 911, but was unable to dial 911 directly because of the sequence that you must dial 9 first to get an outside line. After several attempts, 2 911 law enforcement officials finally received the 911 call. Today we're honored to have FCC Commissioner Pai, who will be addressing us over certain issues and progresses that have been made to address the issue of being able to dial directly to 911. We're also joined by Mr. Hunt, who is Kari's father, who will address us shortly. At this time, I'd like to introduce one of the individuals that is leading the charge for change and pushing for direct 911 systems that will ensure that a person can dial directly to 911 when that need arises. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Congressman Gohmert to the podium, please.
Well, it is just wonderful to have you here, and Kari would be proud. And that's what Hank was just telling me. And, in fact, he said, she would say, Dad, this is freaking awesome. Well, it is. Now, I hadn't thought about the problem before Kari's daughter had it. I hadn't thought about the problem until we lost Kari. And then you realize this is a problem. And it's not just in Marshall, Texas. This is everywhere. And initially the push was, well, this is something that hotels need to deal with. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. In my congressional office, you have to dial 9 to get out. It wouldn't be just hotels. What if a kid's trying to dial out? What if anybody's trying to dial out and they don't know what numbers to dial? So the implications for what started in December a year ago have gone far beyond what we initially were pushing for. But last year we began, as a result of the loss of Kari, so tragically in the hotel room. It was a brutal crime, but it was also a tragedy. But we've been working with other members of Congress. We have a 911 caucus in Congress. People are becoming aware, and that's why just having this today, where the Commissioner Pai came, and Hank is here, and Kari's family represented here, it makes a difference, because it has been the awareness that is making the difference. But Commissioner Pai's office, I want to thank him for the work he and those in his office have done. They have been so helpful. And we've also worked with American Hotel and Lodging Association. They had just printed an op-ed that we had done as a feature story in their publication, bringing this issue home. We've also worked with the National Emergency Number Association, NENA, and also telecommunications providers and the multi-line telephone system providers, MLTS. So there are a lot of stakeholders in this. We didn't want to drive somebody into bankruptcy in the hotel business, but what we have found in dealing with vendors, and I'm very grateful for the hotel chains that have sat down and met with me and my staff, for the multi-line telephone system providers that have sat down with us and worked, and for all of those in the commissioner's office who have been pushing this issue. But it's really been amazing. You know, in Congress we're used to contentiousness and frustrating battles back and forth, and sometimes in our own party. But this has been an issue that has struck a nerve across the country and across the different the sectors. People understanding what's at stake here when you're talking about life. So we expect regulations to deal with this issue, and we also know that just by what we have done already, though there's not a law in place right now, what has been done in changing the industry standard, we're now to the point that not only hotels but other businesses are realizing, wow, now that there's so much public awareness, and now that the industry standard is changed and changing and has already changed, then business hotel owners are understanding, wow, if a tragedy like that happens in my business or my hotel, I can't say I didn't know it was an issue, therefore I can get sued and it can cost me millions of dollars if I haven't fixed the problem. I can no longer say, gee, I never thought about it, because of events like this, because of the work of Hank, because of Commissioner Pye, because of the hotel industry, the business industry, the MLTS industry. All of those have been involved. If you're ignorant of it, you're going to have a hard time convincing a jury of that. Did you not know what happened to Kari? Kari lives on, and her legacy will live on in the lives that have probably already been saved. We have 10 of the biggest hotel chains that have already adopted this change, and that represents 40% of the industry. Now, frankly, y'all, I didn't expect that we would have changed 40% of the hotel industry in a year. Normally things don't happen that fast, but that's what's happened with as a result of the awareness of the tragedy of losing Kari. So more than half of the chains have been updated and are in the process of updating their brand standards. That's huge. So with hotels taking responsibility to step forward and make this direct dial change, and like I say, I have been really pleased in meeting with hotel chain groups to find their willingness to step up and make this difference. So we've learned recently that multi-line telephone system, the MLTS products, most of them can be easily configured, which makes it even more of a problem having a defense. Well, gee, it was too cost prohibitive. We've even had some of the MLTS vendors, as a result of losing Kari, that have stepped up and said, you know what, we're going to fix your system for free. I just can't commend those MLTS suppliers enough for stepping up and making that offer. That even makes it more problematic for any hotel or any business that says, gee, it was just too much of a problem. Did you even ask your supplier about fixing it for you? Because as we found, most places it's a very small change in programming that will make the fix for you. So anyway, we've had improvements to the 911 systems across the country, and even in some congressional offices have been making the change as we have. So if you're in my office and you have a problem, 911 will get you out. Thank you, Kari. I didn't even know or think about it before her. So we're very grateful to Kari's family. And Hank, I know this takes you outside your comfort level. This is not your thing. But you know Kari would be so proud. And there is no way we can calculate the difference that you, in standing for Kari, and all of those here, Kari's family, all of those that support making this change have made. I mean, we can't know the people that hadn't been killed or that hadn't died because somebody in one of those 40% have made the change, were able to quickly get 911, get the help they need, and we just know that God has blessed those who have stepped up and made a difference. And so we're grateful to Kari's family, we're grateful to Commissioner Pye, and the Chief's back over there. He's not one for the limelight, which is a little different, it's a little unusual, in public service. And I know back when I was a prosecutor, we had a problem with federal agents back in those days letting the locals do all the work and then rushing in and taking charge of the press conference. But the chief is one of those. He does the work, he protects his people any way, any direction it takes him, and we're grateful for the work here. So thank you for being here. I mean, really, standing room only here, it makes a difference. The word goes out, more people have knowledge, they have no defense to change. And so anyway, at this time, I get the great honor of introducing Hank Hunt, who is Kari's father, who was not about to let his precious Kari die for nothing. She didn't die for nothing. She has made a difference in lives we'll never even know about this side of heaven. But Hank, no, it's not your thing to come to a press conference, but thank you for coming. Please step up and put your visit with us.
As Congressman Gohmert stated, this is outside my comfort zone. So, as I've said before, if I stumble, understand, and if I pause, just bear with me. As Americans, we're all trained to do one thing as children, have been since I was a child, and that is, if you need help, call 911. I remember the fact of, to tell you how far back this goes, the old, I remember being taught you wouldn't need a coin to make a 911 call, and they would know exactly where you are. And that's what my granddaughter did. December, she found herself in a situation even adults would have a hard time fathoming and being able to work through and do the things that she did. And she followed her instinct as taught by her mother, her family, police officers, firefighters, teachers. Something that's been ingrained in children's heads for many years. She went to a hotel phone knowing that there was a need for help, and she called 911. And she heard static. She dialed again and again, and finally 4 times. After the 4th time, she gave up and went to seek help elsewhere, which she did eventually find. We all know and we've heard seconds count. In this matter, it did, and quite a few seconds passed while she was doing that feat. Sometimes I wonder what that child was hearing in the background while doing that. I just don't know of too many adults that could do it. The reason she didn't make it through was because of the number 9. Most of us, well, that makes sense. We knew that. I don't know that in that situation an adult wouldn't try it first. each time she dialed, she heard static, or as I've heard in some cases, it could have been a fast busy. I'm not sure what it was exactly she heard. She described it as a sound. There's no need for roadblocks like this to exist for our children in any way, shape, or form. When a 9-year-old little girl is mature enough and brave enough to make that call in that kind of a situation, she needs to be answered. I've stayed in hotels that have no instructions whatsoever on how to dial for help. I've stayed in hotels that say dial 9, dial an 8, call the front desk, which I certainly hope the person behind that desk is trained in emergency care or knows how to deliver a baby, knows the signs of a stroke. If they're not down the hall, they're on the coke machine, to be able to answer the phone to begin with. I even stayed in a hotel that said, for emergency, dial 6821. No idea who answers that, don't really want to know. That's why I started a petition on December 17th of 2013, and on change.org, being the big bad dad that I felt I was going to shoot for 100 signatures and then march into my congressman's office and show him the massive support that I have for making this change. This morning I checked, and it's halfway between 468,000 and 469,000 and counting as we go. Making this change just makes sense. It's easy to do with technology, as Congressman said. In order to prevent tragedies like this from happening, this change needs to take effect as soon as possible. And I know that it takes time. It's conceivable, believe it or not, that at an intersection in a town, you could have a hotel from a different channel on each corner of that intersection, and in each building is different instructions on how to call 911. That shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. It needs to be consistent from state to state. If I take a family on vacation from Texas to New York, and we stop along the way, we should be able to do and should be and feel comfortable knowing that all we have to do is call 911 and we get help. If you agree with us, sign the petition for us. It's making a difference. Contact your congressman and let them know how you feel about it. And as I said before, if a child is mature enough and brave enough to make that call, then she needs to be answered. She needs to hear the words everybody should hear, and that's 911, what is your emergency? On behalf of my wife, our family, our friends, our loved ones, thank you, and I want to introduce Commissioner Pye at this moment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Hank, for your remarks. I want to thank the entire Hunt family for being here as well and for the kind words you've offered me since I arrived in Texas. I'd also like to thank Chief Compa, Lieutenant Glenn Stone, and everyone at the Marshall Police Department for the hospitality you've extended to us for this cause, and every day for the service you render to the people of Marshall, Texas. People that the chief didn't have a chance to mention. I believe Pam Allen, the executive director of the Texas Eastern 911 District, is here. Kelly Merriweather, the executive director of CSEC, as well as Patrick Tyler, the general counsel, is here. Joe Hudson, the battalion chief of the Marshall Fire Department, is here as well. And finally, Russell Rao, the head of the Greater Harris County 911 Emergency Network, which is the largest 911 network in Texas. I appreciate all of you and so many more for being here. And I want you to know that your presence makes a difference. You know, our nation's third president, Thomas Jefferson, once said that one man with courage makes a majority. Today we are gathered here in Marshall, Texas because of one such man. As a father myself, I can't imagine what it would be like to lose one of my children. As you've heard, Hank Hunt knows that pain. 13 months ago, as he observed, his daughter Kari was killed by her estranged husband in a hotel room not far from here. And as he said, Hank's 9-year-old granddaughter was in the room and tried to save her mother by dialing 911. The call just didn't go through. So she tried dialing 911 again, and again, and again. Each time, same result. She was never able to reach anyone who could help because, as we now know, the hotel's phone system required her first to use an access code, number 9, before dialing 911. And had the hotel system been configured properly, her 911 call would have been answered by a public servant working in this very building, someone who could have helped in Kari's moment of need. Now, confronted with such a tragedy, many people would retreat into their grief, and no one would fault them for doing that. Hank chose another path. He didn't want anyone else to suffer the way that his family had suffered. So he began a movement, now 468,000 strong, to raise awareness about the problem that his daughter had in dialing 911 in that hotel room, a problem that delayed the arrival of first responders by precious minutes. Now, like many of you, I'm here today because of Hank's fortitude. After hearing his story a little more than a year ago, I gave Hank, as he might remember, my personal commitment that I would do what I could within my power, with the platform that I've been blessed with, to ensure that no one would ever again confront the situation that his granddaughter confronted, dialing 911, but not being able to reach anyone who could help. Now, by and large, our nation's 911 system has been a tremendous success. And much of that success is due to the simplicity and the uniformity of that 3-digit number. When your life, or the life of someone you love, is in danger, you shouldn't have to think about whether you need to use a 7 or an 8 or a 9 to reach an outside line. You should be able to dial 911 and reach first responders who can assist you. Dialing 911 must always work. And this is especially true when it comes to our kids. My colleague, Commissioner Rosenworcel at the FCC, says that the first number that she taught her children was 911. And I bet that there are millions of parents across the United States who did the same thing. But when we teach our children to call for help, we don't need to tell them that in some places they need to dial 911, in others they need to dial 911, and yet more they need to dial 911. No, we all teach them that the only number they need is 911, everywhere and every time. After hearing Hank's story, I wanted to assess the scope of the problem as well as potential solutions. So almost 1 year ago, I started an inquiry into the use of multi-line telephone systems, or MLTS, for 911 dialing. Working with our nation's lodging industry and MLTS manufacturers and vendors, we quickly determined that what happened with the phone system here in Marshall was not an anomaly. It was indicative of a widespread problem across this country. For example, according to a survey conducted by the American Hotel and Lodging Association, or AHLA, early last year, before remediation efforts began, dialing 911 would not work in over 55% of franchised hotels. And for independently owned hotels, that figure was even more stark, 68%. Now, these numbers were especially troubling because the vast majority of our nation's lodging properties are franchised or independently owned. Moreover, most MLTS vendors reported that they didn't ship all of their products with a default setting allowing for direct dialing of 911. This meant that the problem extended well beyond hotels and tens of thousands of other large buildings across our country, schools, offices, what have you. The telephone system would fail Americans when they needed it the most. Finally, what we learned in our inquiry was that this problem can be solved. The MLTS vendors reported that every single one of their phone systems could be configured to allow for direct dialing of 911. And they said that reprogramming systems that were set up without direct dialing would be relatively easy and inexpensive. So in nearly all cases, there's no technical reason why every phone in this country can't be set up to allow for direct 911 calling. Now, once we had a handle on the extent of the problem, We rolled up our sleeves and we went to work to fix it. And I want to emphasize the word we. Although my name has been affixed to some of the stories that have been relating to this issue, this has truly been a team effort. And there's no better example of that team spirit than Mark Fletcher. I want to recognize him for his tireless work raising awareness, including my own. It was a simple tweet from Mark and an email to me that had him sitting in my office not long after, raising my own awareness about this problem and inspiring me to do something about it. Mark, thank you for being such a strong advocate for so many others across this country. There is good news to share this morning in Texas. Let's start this morning with hotels and motels, where the picture is much brighter than it was a year ago, as the Congressman pointed out. At the beginning of 2014, none of our nation's largest hotel chains had brand standards requiring their franchise properties to allow direct access to 911. And this might explain why franchise locations lag behind their owned and managed counterparts when it came to direct dialing. But today I'm pleased to report Carlson, Hilton, La Quinta, Marriott, Motel 6, and Starwood have adopted such brand standards, and Hyatt is committed to adopting one this year. And this simple step alone will extend direct 911 dialing to over 7,800 lodging properties. These companies are now in the process of making sure that their franchise locations come into compliance with these new brand standards, and their work is paying off. For instance, at all 854 La Quinta properties in the United States, guests can now directly dial 911. Direct access to 911 is now a reality at over 75% of Marriott's franchise properties, and Marriott has promised that that number will be 100% by the end of 2015. Lodging companies are also leading by example. At every single hotel owned or directly managed by Carlson, Hyatt, Intercontinental, La Quinta, Marriott, Motel 6, Starwood, and Wyndham, guests can now directly dial 911. And that's also the case at 99% of properties owned or managed by Hilton, which is up from just 50% a few months ago. Now, even at those chains that haven't yet adopted a formal brand standard, substantial progress has been made with respect to franchise properties. Now, take the Intercontinental Hotel Group, which includes Holiday Inn, Crowne Plaza, and Staybridge. Now, last year it found that 927 of its franchise properties didn't allow direct access to 911. But now, according to that company's latest report, that problem has been fixed at 824 of those hotels. And we've been informed that it will be corrected at the remaining 103 properties no later than the end of March. So just think about that. One company by itself making an effort soon will have fixed this problem at 927 locations across this country. Now, stepping back for a second from all the blizzard of facts and figures, what does all this mean? Well, one way to look at it is this. We are now on track to have solved this problem by the end of this year at all Country Inn Suites, Crowne Plaza, Doubletree, Embassy Suites, Fairfield Inn, Four Points, Gaylord, Hampton Inn, Hilton, Holiday Inn, Hyatt, Intercontinental, La Quinta, Marriott, Motel 6, Park Plaza, Radisson, Residence Inn, Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, Sheraton, Staybridge, W, and Westin properties. But that's all hats and a lot of capital. That's real progress. But our efforts haven't been limited to these large hotel chains. AHLA has been working with all of the association's 19,790 member properties to move the ball forward on this issue. It's been explaining to them how to upgrade phone systems to enable direct 911 dialing and educating them on the importance of getting this done before another tragedy strikes. And the results? Well, thousands of independent hotels and motels now have direct dialing. I want to salute AHLA for its leadership, for working with our office so cooperatively, and its commitment to solving this problem, and in particular, Vanessa Cinders, who I believe is here today. Thank you, Vanessa. Fresh off maternity leave, she flew down from Washington to be with us today. We really appreciate it. How they exemplify the American spirit each and every day. One great example is CJ Clayton, and I don't know if CJ is here today. but she is the general manager of the Staybridge Suites down the road in Longview. And when she learned about this story, she proactively did what was necessary for her hotel to allow direct 911 dialing. And so CJ, wherever you are, thank you, and thank you to all of the other general managers, hotel employees who are taking up the baton and making a difference. Small difference perhaps, but a big difference to the safety of all of your guests. Now, when it comes to hotels and motels, as I've said, we have achieved some significant results, but there's still more to do. Hotel chains have to follow through and fully implement the brand standard they've adopted. We need to convince those chains that haven't yet adopted brand standards to do the right thing. And we need to make sure that the smaller chains and independent hotels continue their efforts as well. Now, as I said earlier, this problem isn't just a problem that's limited to hotels. That's why our effort has also included the companies that make and distribute these MLTS systems. All of the systems being manufactured today, as I said, can be configured to enable direct 911 dialing. The key question is whether they are configured to allow that functionality once they get into the field. I'm pleased that vendors generally recommend to their customers that their phone systems should be configured to allow direct 911 dialing. But as any of you know who have ever opened a box for a tech gadget or for an appliance, one recommendation buried in an avalanche of instructions just isn't enough. Instead, these systems should be shipped with a default setting that permits direct 911 dialing. And that way a school, a company, a library won't have to take special steps to activate 911 in its building. Now, thankfully, we've made progress in achieving that goal as well. Specifically, I'm thankful to ShoreTel, Windstream, NEC, and Vertical Communications for making direct 911 dialing a default setting in all of their MLTS products. I certainly hope that other vendors will follow suit soon. And we also need the cooperation of vendors to make sure that the phone systems that already have been installed throughout this country are configured properly. For instance, Avaya has recommended that its customers verify that their systems allow 911 dialing. It's also sent a product support notice to all of its customers, listing all the checkup services that they can use. Panasonic has issued a service bulletin to their resellers, encouraging them to tell customers to program their systems for direct 911 dialing. And some MLTS vendors and distributors have been offering free or low-cost ways for property owners to modify their existing systems and ensure that direct 911 dialing is enabled. I commend these efforts, and I hope that all of the vendors will follow these companies' leads and alert their customers about this issue, and help them ensure that all systems permit direct 911 dialing. But here too, still more is needed. Many institutions have phone systems that just aren't configured to allow for direct 911 dialing. They need to fix them. And in this respect, I'm disappointed that the place where I work, the Federal Communications Commission, has fallen short. Last year, one of my colleagues, Commissioner Mike O'Reilly, discovered something disturbing. At the FCC's own headquarters in Washington, D.C., the phone system doesn't allow for direct 911 dialing. Instead, when you pick up a phone and you dial 911, this is what you hear. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory and call again for assistance. This is a recording. Now, I know that that remains the case at our building because the last thing I did before leaving Washington for this event was dialing 911. And I got that same recording. Now, in my view, another sentence should be added to that message. This situation is completely unacceptable. At the FCC, we should be leading the way, not lagging behind when it comes to public safety communications. And that's why both I and Commissioner O'Reilly have asked the chairman of the FCC to fix it. It hasn't yet happened, but I can tell you this. I'm going to be a pest until it does. If hotel chains across this country can step up to the plate and enable direct 911 dialing at thousands of locations, big and small, across this nation, then surely the FCC, the nation's preeminent communications authority, can do the same at its own headquarters. In conclusion, the bottom line is that we never know where and when an emergency is going to occur. It could happen tomorrow in a Marshall, Texas hotel room. It could happen next week in an office building or a school. But we do know that when disaster strikes, life and death may hang in the balance. There's a pretty good chance that someone's going to pick up a phone and dial 911. And that call needs to reach emergency personnel, like the dedicated public servants here at the Marshall Police Department and Marshall Fire Department. And that's why the movement that Mr. Hunt started right here in Marshall has been so successful. Hank brought to light a problem that never occurred to most of us. And he championed an issue where the right answer is the obvious one. Because you don't need to be an expert in communications law or electrical engineering to know that people who dial 911 should be able to reach somebody who can help, not a recording, not static. You just need some good old-fashioned common sense. And that seems to be an abundant supply here in Texas. But to begin that movement in the face of such a horrific personal tragedy required a lot more than common sense. It required selflessness. It required persistence. And more importantly, it required courage. The courage of one man who was in the process of making a majority across this country with each and every phone system that's configured to connect those in need directly with those who can help. It has been a tremendous privilege for me as a public official to stand alongside this man and work on his cause. I know that he'll keep working until the job is done, and until it's done, I'll be there behind him, backing him up every step of the way. Thank you very much.